This were your last lie.
They left me behind like a piece of luggage nobody wanted to claim. I'm standing in my own kitchen holding a boarding pass for a flight that departed 3 hours ago, watching my neighbor Mrs. Henderson water her petunias through the window. My wife Angela took our daughter Mia, her sister Rebecca, and even Rebecca's bratty kids to Hawaii for what was supposed to be our family vacation to celebrate Rebecca's third wedding. The one I paid for, all of it. Sorry, honey, the resort only had 4 spots left, Angela had said yesterday morning, not even looking up from her phone. Rebecca really needs this after her divorce. You understand, right? I understood plenty. I understood that my wife of 22 years had just excluded me from a $15,000 vacation I'd funded with my freelance IT consulting money. I understood that Rebecca, who'd never worked a day in her entitled life, somehow always managed to be the priority in every family decision. And I understood that my own daughter hadn't even protested when they discussed leaving Dad behind. The house feels different without their constant chatter and Angela's endless phone calls about legal cases. I'm Nick Morrison, 43 years old, and I've just realized I'm completely invisible in my own life. My phone buzzes. A text from Angela. Having amazing time? Resort is gorgeous. Don't forget to water the plants. Don't forget to water the plants. Like I'm the hired help. I walk to my laptop and pull up our joint bank account. The Hawaii charges are all there. Flights, resort, meals, activities. 15 grand, just like I thought. But there's something else that makes my whole body freeze. A charge from 2 weeks ago I didn't authorize, Victoria's Secret, $300. Angela hasn't bought lingerie in years, and definitely not the kind that costs $300. Then I see it. Another charge, dinner at Romano's, the fancy Italian place downtown, last Tuesday. I was working late that night, debugging code for a client. Angela said she was staying late at the law firm for a deposition prep. My hands are shaking as I scroll through more transactions. Hotel charges, more dinners, a pattern going back months that I was too stupid and trusting to notice. The front door opens and Mrs. Henderson pokes her head in. Nick, everything okay? I saw Angela's car leave early this morning with suitcases. They went to Hawaii, I say, my voice sounding hollow. Family vacation. Her face scrunches up in confusion. Without you? Without me? She steps inside, uninvited but welcome. Dorothy Henderson has lived next door for 15 years and has never minced words about anything. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What kind of wife leaves her husband behind on a family vacation? The kind who's screwing someone else? The words come out before I can stop them. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widen, but she doesn't look surprised. She looks like someone who's been waiting for me to figure out what everyone else already knew. Oh, honey, she says softly. I was wondering when you'd catch on. You knew? I've seen that red BMW in your driveway during the day when you're at client meetings. Same car, same time every week for months. I thought maybe it was one of Angela's colleagues, but she trails off, looking uncomfortable. But what? But colleagues don't usually stay for 3 hours and leave looking like they just rolled out of bed. I feel something cold and hard settling in my chest. Not heartbreak. That would imply I still had feelings left to break. This is something else. Something calculating. What kind of car did you say? Red BMW, newer model. License plate starts with RVD, I think. I noticed cars because my late husband was a mechanic. I'm already moving toward my computer, pulling up the reverse license lookup tool I use for background checks in my IT security work. It takes me less than 5 minutes to find him. Richard Richie Valdez, age 34, drives a red BMW 340i, works as a life coach and motivational speaker, according to his flashy website. His LinkedIn shows he's connected to half the lawyers in the city, including my wife. His Instagram is a goldmine of douchebag behavior, gym selfies, motivational quotes over sunset photos, and pictures of expensive dinners at restaurants I recognize from our bank statements. But it's the recent photos that make me want to put my fist through the screen. There's Angela, in 3 different photos from the past month, always tagged at locations I never went to, always looking happier than she's looked at home in years. The most recent one was posted yesterday, Angela at the airport wearing the Victoria's Secret lingerie under a sheer top, with the caption, "Flying high with my favorite lawyer, Hawaii, here we come." My wife is in Hawaii with her boyfriend, on my dime, while I water the plants. I screenshot everything and save it to a secure folder. Then I do something that surprises even me. I laugh. It starts as a chuckle, then builds into full-blown laughter that has Mrs. Henderson looking at me like I've lost my mind. Maybe I have, but for the first time in years, I feel completely, crystal clear about what I need to do. "Miss Henderson," I say, wiping tears from my eyes, "how would you feel about watching my house for about a year?" "A year? Where are you going?" I'm already pulling out my phone, canceling the automatic payment for Angela's credit card. Then, I cancel her car payment, her gym membership, her subscription to the legal journal she never reads but insists she needs. Everywhere, I tell her. I'm going everywhere. By the time Angela's plane touched down in Maui, I'd already liquidated half our joint savings and transferred it to an account she didn't know existed. The beauty of being the family's financial manager and IT guy is that I knew every password, every account, every automatic payment. I also knew exactly how to disappear without leaving a trace. I'd learned a few things about digital privacy over the years, partly from my work and partly from a paranoid streak I'd developed after too many news stories about identity theft. Now that paranoia was paying off in ways I never expected, my phone rang as I was packing my truck with everything that mattered to me, which turned out to be surprisingly little. Angela's name flashed on the screen. "Nick, what the heck did you do? My card got declined at dinner." "Hello to you too, sweetheart. How's paradise? Don't play games with me. Fix whatever you screwed up at the bank. Rebecca's embarrassed and the kids are asking questions." I could hear voices in the background. Rebecca's voice, shrill and demanding as always. "Tell him we need that fixed now. This is supposed to be my celebration." "You know what, Angela? I think there's been a misunderstanding." "What kind of misunderstanding?" "The kind where you think you can take your boyfriend on vacation with my money while I sit at home like a chump." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When Angela finally spoke, her voice had shifted into lawyer mode. Cold, calculating, defensive. "I don't know what you think you know, but red BMW. W's license RV 429. Richie Valdez, your life coach. 3-hour afternoon sessions at our house while I'm working. Romano's, Morton's, that new sushi place downtown. Should I keep going?" Another long pause. Then, "Nick, let me explain." "No need. I understand perfectly. You wanted a vacation from your marriage, so you took one. Permanently." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done. With you, with playing house, with pretending we're still a family." "You want to be with Richie? Congratulations. You can figure out how to pay for it yourself. You can't just..." I hung up and turned off the phone. Then I removed the battery and dropped it in a trash can at the gas station where I was filling up my truck. Mrs. Henderson was waiting on her porch when I pulled into the driveway one last time. I'd already given her a key and written out instructions for the lawn service and utilities. Everything was paid up for 6 months, after which it would be Angela's problem to figure out. "You sure about this, honey?" she asked, taking the envelope with the house information. "More sure than I've been about anything in 20 years. What should I tell Angela when she gets back?" "Tell her she can reach me through my lawyer when she's ready to discuss divorce terms." I'd already retained Tom Dawson, a bulldog attorney who specialized in men's divorce rights. He was expensive, but I'd learned that you get what you pay for, and especially when your wife is a lawyer herself. The drive out of town felt like shedding an old skin. I'd mapped out a route that would take me through 30 states over the next year. I had enough money to travel modestly but comfortably, and my laptop meant I could pick up freelance work anywhere with decent internet. But first, I had some learning to do. My first stop was Denver, where I enrolled in a boxing gym run by an ex-Marine named Ray Kowalski. Ray was 68 years old and built like a fire hydrant, with hands that looked like they'd been carved from oak and a stare that could stop traffic. "What do you want to learn?" he asked on my first day, looking me up and down, like he was evaluating a piece of meat. "How to fight. A lot of different kinds of fighting. You want to learn sport boxing, self-defense, or you want to learn how to hurt people who hurt you?" The question hung in the air between us. Ray had the kind of eyes that saw through BS, and I got the feeling he'd heard every sob story in the book. The third one, I said. He nodded slowly. Thought so. You got that look. Like somebody took something from you that you can't get back. Something like that. Well, I can teach you how to throw a punch and take one, but the real fighting, the kind that matters, that happens up here, he tapped his temple. That's something you got to learn on your own. Over the next 3 months in Denver, I learned both kinds of fighting. Ray taught me footwork, combinations, how to read an opponent's body language, how to take a hit without going down. But the mental part, the strategic thinking, that came from long hours in cheap motel rooms, planning and researching and thinking through every angle of what I was going to do when I got home. I hired a private investigator in my hometown to keep tabs on Angela and Richie. The reports came weekly, full of details that would have destroyed me a year earlier, but now just fed the cold, calculating part of my brain that was planning their downfall. Angela had moved Richie into our house within 2 weeks of returning from Hawaii. She'd filed for divorce, claiming abandonment and emotional cruelty. She was asking for the house, half my business assets, and alimony. She'd also started telling people that I'd had a nervous breakdown and disappeared, leaving her to pick up the pieces of our troubled marriage. Richie had moved his motivational speaking business into my home office. He was using my address for his business license and had started hosting success seminars in our living room, charging lonely housewives and desperate middle managers $300 each to hear him talk about unlocking their potential. My daughter Mia had taken Angela's side completely, posting on social media about what a deadbeat dad I was for abandoning the family. She'd started college at State, and according to my PI, she was telling everyone that her father had run off with the younger woman. The lies were so comprehensive, so carefully constructed, that I almost admired the artistry of it. Angela was a good lawyer, and she'd built a narrative that painted her as the victim and me as the villain. She'd turned my own daughter against me and convinced half the town that I was the bad guy in this story. She had no idea that I was collecting evidence of every lie, every manipulation, every detail of the life she was building on the foundation of my destroyed reputation. In month 4, I moved to New Orleans and learned about surveillance technology from a guy who used to work for the FBI. In month 6, I was in Phoenix taking a course in digital forensics. Month 8 found me in Seattle, studying with a retired private investigator who taught me about social engineering and psychological manipulation. I was becoming someone new, someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous than the naive husband who'd been left behind to water the plants. The old Nick Morrison was dead. The man who would eventually return home was someone else entirely, someone with a plan. I came back to town on a Tuesday in October, exactly 13 months after I'd left. The leaves were turning, and there was that crisp bite in the air that always reminded me why I'd loved this place once upon a time. Now it just looked small and shabby, like a movie set that had been left to decay. My first stop was Tom Dawson's law office. My attorney had aged in the year I'd been gone, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. But his smile was sharp as a blade when I walked through his door. Well, the prodigal husband returns. You look different, Nick. I was different. 40 pounds of muscle different, thanks to Ray's training and a year of physical labor I'd picked up between learning sessions. My hair was shorter, my clothes were better, and I moved with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you're capable of. How bad is it? I asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. Legally, not as bad as your wife thinks. She's been operating under the assumption that you'd never come back, so she's gotten sloppy. Emotionally? Well, that depends on how much you care about what people think. I don't? Good, because Angela's done a number on your reputation. Half the town thinks you ran off with your secretary, which is impressive since you don't have a secretary. The other half thinks you had a gambling problem and skipped town to avoid debts. What about the house? Still legally yours. She can't sell it without your signature, though she's tried. Richie's been living there like he owns the place, running his little business out of your home office. Your neighbors are getting pretty tired of the traffic from his seminars. I smiled for the first time since walking into town. Tell me about the seminars. Twice a week, sometimes more. He charges people to come to your house and listen to him talk about success and motivation. Uses your address on all his business materials. Technically, he's operating a business without proper permits in a residential zone. That's interesting. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying me with the look of a man who'd seen plenty of divorces go ugly. What are you planning, Nick? Justice. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. What do I need to do to reclaim my house? Technically nothing. It's your house. But if you want to avoid complications, we should file a motion to establish temporary residence while the divorce proceedings continue. Give you legal cover for whatever you're planning to do. Do it. There's something else you should know. Angela's been seeing a therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She's been building a case that you're mentally unstable and potentially dangerous. If you do anything that looks like harassment or stalking, she'll use it against you. I pulled out a thick folder and set it on Tom's desk. Then it's a good thing I have documentation of everything she's been doing for the past year. Tom opened the folder and started reading. His eyebrows climbed higher with each page. Bank records showing Angela's spending on Richie. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, photos from social media showing them together at events while she was claiming to be devastated by my abandonment. Phone records showing hundreds of calls between them dating back 2 years before I left. Jesus Christ, Nick. Where did you get all this? I'm good at my job, and I had a lot of time to get better at it. This is comprehensive. She's been claiming that your marriage was troubled for years, that you were emotionally distant and possibly having an affair yourself. This documentation shows she was cheating long before you left. It shows more than that. Look at page 15. Tom flipped to the page and whistled low. Business partnership documents? Richie isn't just her boyfriend. They've been planning to start a law practice together, specializing in divorce mediation and life coaching for women going through relationship transitions. They were going to use my house as their office and my money as startup capital. This changes everything. She's not just cheating. She's been planning to defraud you. Now you're getting it. Tom closed the folder and looked at me with something that might have been respect. What do you want to do with this? I want my life back, and I want them to pay for taking it. Legally, this gives us everything we need to not only block her divorce claims, but potentially file countersuits for fraud, alienation of affection, and breach of fiduciary duty. We could take her to the cleaners. That's not enough. What do you mean? I stood up and straightened my jacket. Legal consequences are just the beginning, Tom. They destroyed my reputation, turned my daughter against me, and stole a year of my life. A judge's ruling isn't going to give me back what they took. Nick, be careful. Don't do anything that could... I'm not going to break any laws, but I'm also not going to pretend that justice and revenge are different things. Sometimes they're exactly the same thing. I left Tom's office and drove through town, taking inventory of how things had changed. My old haunts looked the same, but I felt like a ghost haunting his former life. The diner where Angela and I used to have breakfast on Sundays. The park where I'd taught Mia to ride a bike. The movie theater where we'd had our first date 25 years ago. All of it belonged to someone else now. Someone who'd been naive enough to believe that being a good husband and father was enough to protect the life he'd built. That someone was gone. In his place was a man who understood that the world was divided into two kinds of people: predators and prey. For 22 years, I'd been prey. Now it was time to hunt. The house looked different with Richie's red BMW in the driveway. Smaller somehow, like it was embarrassed to be associated with the kind of man who put spinner rims on a luxury car and covered it with motivational decals. Unleash Your Potential was plastered across the rear window in gold letters, and there was a magnetic sign on the door advertising Valdez Success Seminars, transform your life today. I parked across the street and watched through the living room windows as Richie paced back and forth in front of a dozen middle-aged people sitting on folding chairs in what used to be our family room. He was wearing a shiny suit and gesturing dramatically, probably telling them about the power of positive thinking or some other recycled self-help garbage. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Angela. We need to talk before you do something stupid." I typed back, "Already did something stupid. I married you." The response came immediately. "I'm serious, Nick. Come to the house at 8 p.m. Richie will be gone, and we can discuss this like adults." "Your house now? Don't be childish. We both know you can't just waltz back in here and pretend nothing happened." I smiled and put the phone away. Angela always did underestimate me. At exactly 8 p.m., I walked up to my own front door and used my key. The lock had been changed, but I'd expected that. Good thing I'd learned a few things about locks during my year away. Angela was waiting in the kitchen, sitting at the table where we'd shared thousands of meals and made hundreds of family decisions. She looked older, more tired than I remembered. Success coaching apparently wasn't as relaxing as she'd hoped. "Hello, sweetheart," I said, settling into my old chair like I'd never left. "Nice what you've done with the place." She'd redecorated everything. The family photos were gone, replaced with generic art and motivational posters. The comfortable furniture I'd chosen had been swapped out for sleek modern pieces that looked expensive and uncomfortable. It was like someone had erased every trace of the family that used to live here. "You can't just break into my house, Nick." My house. My name on the deed, my money that paid for it, my key that opened the door. Though I noticed you changed the locks. Afraid I might come home and find something I wasn't supposed to see? I changed the locks because you abandoned us. You disappeared for over a year without a word. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to think that your husband found out you were cheating and decided he'd had enough, which is exactly what happened. Angela's lawyer mask slipped for just a moment, and I caught a glimpse of genuine fear in her eyes. She'd been operating under the assumption that I was the same pushover who'd let her walk all over him for years. The man sitting across from her now was clearly someone different. "I don't know what you think you know. I know about Richie. I know about the business you're planning to start together. I know about the hotel rooms and the expensive dinners and the Victoria's Secret lingerie you bought for your Hawaiian vacation with him. I know you've been telling people I had a breakdown and abandoned my family, when the truth is you drove me away so you could move your boyfriend into my house." Her face went pale. "You've been spying on me." "I've been protecting myself." "There's a difference. This is harassment, Nick. I could have you arrested." "For what? Sitting in my own kitchen? Using my own key to enter my own house? I think you're confused about who has the legal standing here." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. Go ahead." I'd love to explain to Officer Martinez why there's an unlicensed business operating out of a residential property. I'm sure the city would be very interested in the tax implications of those success seminars. Angela's hand froze over her phone. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. The man you married, the one who let you make all the decisions and paid for everything and never asked questions, that man is gone. You ended him when you decided I was disposable. Nick, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can get divorced. That's the only thing we can do. The question is whether we do it the easy way or the hard way." "What's the easy way?" I pulled out a document Tom had prepared and slid it across the table. "You sign this agreement. You get to keep your car and your personal belongings. I keep the house, the business, and my retirement accounts. No alimony, no property split. Clean break." She didn't even look at the papers. "That's ridiculous. I'm entitled to half of everything. You were entitled to half when you were my wife. When you decided to start a new life with Richie, you gave up those entitlements. A judge will be very interested in the evidence I've collected over the past year. Bank records, hotel receipts, business documents showing you and Richie planned to defraud me. Photos, phone records, witness statements. You want to roll the dice in court? We can do that. But I don't think you'll like the outcome." For the first time since I'd walked in, Angela looked genuinely scared. "You can't prove fraud. I can prove you used marital assets to fund an affair and plan a business venture with your boyfriend, while lying to me about the state of our marriage. I can prove you've been operating an unlicensed business out of our home. I can prove you've been telling people I abandoned the family when you were the one who destroyed it. What about Mia? She's your daughter too." The mention of my daughter hit harder than I wanted to show. Mia had been the light of my life for 18 years, and losing her had been the worst part of this whole nightmare. Mia's an adult. She made her choice when she decided to believe your lies instead of asking for my side of the story. Maybe someday she'll figure out the truth. Maybe not. But I'm not going to let you use her as leverage." Angela was quiet for a long moment, studying the papers in front of her. "And if I don't sign, then we do this the hard way. I file countersuits for fraud, alienation of affection, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I make sure every lawyer in the city knows what you did. I make sure Richie's business clients know what kind of man they're paying for advice. I make sure everyone who believed your sob story knows the truth about who really destroyed this marriage. You're threatening me. I'm educating you. There's a difference. The front door opened, and Richie walked in, talking loudly on his phone. Yeah, baby. The seminar went great tonight. Made $1,500 in 2 hours. These people will pay anything to... He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me sitting at the table. Hello, Richie, I said pleasantly. How's business? Richie Valdez was exactly what I'd expected from his Instagram photos, but somehow worse in person. He had the kind of artificial confidence that came from too much time in front of mirrors and not enough time dealing with real problems. His suit was expensive but flashy, his hair was styled with too much product, and he wore the expression of a man who'd never been punched in the face but probably should have been. Angela, who is this? He asked, though his eyes suggested he already knew. This is my husband, Angela said quietly. Nick, your ex-husband, Richie corrected, puffing out his chest like a bantam rooster. And you're trespassing, buddy. This is our house now. I stayed seated, keeping my voice calm and pleasant. Actually, it's my house, my name on the deed, my money that bought it. You're the one who's trespassing, though I prefer to think of you as a squatter. Richie looked to Angela for support, but she was staring at the divorce papers like they might spontaneously combust. Angela, call the cops. Get this loser out of here. I wouldn't do that if I were you, I said. The police might be interested in the unlicensed business you're running out of a residential property. They might also wonder why you're using a false address on your business license. False address? This is my address. No, it's my address. You don't live here legally, you don't have any ownership stake in the property, and you certainly don't have permission to operate a business here. In fact, I'd say you're in violation of about 6 different city ordinances. Richie's confidence wavered slightly. Angela, tell him, shut up, Richie. Angela's voice was sharp with stress. Just shut up for a minute. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was a good lawyer, which meant she was smart enough to recognize when she was beaten. The evidence I had would destroy her in court, and she knew it. What happens to Richie? She asked finally. That's between you and him. I don't care where he goes as long as it's not here. Richie finally seemed to grasp that this wasn't going according to whatever plan he and Angela had discussed. Wait, what's happening here? Angela, you said this guy was out of the picture. You said he was never coming back. Plans change, I said. Life's funny that way. Angela, tell me you're not seriously considering this. We have plans, the business, the partnership, everything we talked about. Angela's face was a mask of conflicting emotions. I could see her weighing her options, calculating the odds, trying to find an angle that would let her keep some control of the situation. Maybe we should discuss this privately, she said to me. Richie, could you give us a few minutes? No way, I'm not leaving you alone with this psycho. I laughed, which seemed to unnerve both of them. Psycho? That's rich coming from a man who's been living in another man's house and spending his money for over a year. I earned my place here, Richie said, his voice rising. I gave Angela something you never could. I made her happy. You made her happy with my credit cards and my house and my absence. Let's see how happy you make her when she has to pay her own bills. You think this is about money? Richie stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his presence. This is about being a real man. Something you obviously know nothing about. I stood up slowly, and the change in dynamics was immediate. The year of boxing training had added muscle, but more importantly, it had taught me how to carry myself. Richie was taller than me, but he moved like someone who'd never been in a real fight. I moved like someone who'd learned how to hurt people. You want to talk about being a real man? I asked quietly. A real man doesn't sneak around with another man's wife. A real man doesn't move into another man's house while he's gone. A real man doesn't build his business on lies and fraud. Fraud? What the heck are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of his business license application. You listed this address as your primary residence and business location, but you don't own this property, you don't have a lease agreement, and you don't have permission from the actual owner to operate a business here. That's fraud, Richie. The kind that can get you arrested. His face went white. Angela, you said this was all legal. You said you were handling the paperwork. I was handling it, Angela snapped. This is a temporary situation until the divorce is finalized. Except the divorce isn't going to be finalized the way you planned, I said. In fact, I'm thinking we might not get divorced at all. I'm thinking I might just stay right here and see how you like sharing the house with both of us. You can't do that, Angela said. Why not? It's my house. I can live here if I want to. Of course, that might make things awkward for you and Richie. Hard to run success seminars with the loser husband sitting in the corner, taking notes. Richie was looking back and forth between us like a spectator at a tennis match. Angela, what is he talking about? What divorce papers? What evidence? Nothing, Angela said quickly. He's bluffing. I opened the folder Tom had prepared and spread the contents across the table. Bank statements, hotel receipts, photographs, phone records. A year's worth of evidence laid out like a prosecution case. 2 years, I said to Richie. That's how long you and Angela have been planning this. 2 years of secret meetings, planning sessions, business documents. You thought you were so smart, using encrypted messaging apps and private email accounts. But you forgot something important. What? I'm really good with computers. Richie picked up one of the bank statements and his face went gray. It showed a payment to him from Angela's account, with a memo line that read, "Business planning consultation." This is from 6 months before I left, I continued. Back when you were supposedly just Angela's colleague. Funny how much business planning you two were doing during your lunch meetings. Angela. Richie's voice was barely a whisper. Please tell me you didn't put this stuff in writing. Angela's silence was answer enough. I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. Here's what's going to happen. You have 24 hours to remove yourself and your belongings from my house. Angela, you have 48 hours to decide whether you want to sign the divorce agreement or fight this in court with all the evidence I've collected. And if we don't, Richie asked, though he sounded like he already knew the answer, then I start making phone calls to the police about your business violations, to the state bar about Angela's ethics violations, to your clients about the kind of man they're paying for advice, to the local newspaper about the heartwarming story of how a cheating wife and her boyfriend tried to steal a man's life while he was gone. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Richie, that motivational poster in the living room, the one that says success is 99% preparation and 1% inspiration, you should have prepared better. 24 hours later, Richie's BMW was gone from the driveway, but the house still felt contaminated by his presence. I'd spent the morning removing his motivational posters and burning them in the backyard fire pit, along with the business cards and flyers he'd left scattered around my home office. Angela's car was still in the garage, which meant she was still deciding whether to fight or surrender. I was hoping she'd choose to fight. The easy way out wouldn't satisfy the cold anger that had been building in my chest for over a year, Mrs. Henderson came over around noon with a casserole and a barely concealed excitement that reminded me why I'd always liked her. So, she said, settling into a kitchen chair like she was preparing for a long gossip session, I saw that red BMW leave around midnight with a trailer full of stuff. Richie looked like he'd seen a ghost. Probably just realized he'd overstayed his welcome. And Angela? She's been pacing around the house all morning like a caged animal. Keep seeing her shadow in the windows. She's got some decisions to make. What kind of decisions? I told Mrs. Henderson the basics, enough to satisfy her curiosity without getting into the details that might come back to haunt me in court. She listened with the focused attention of someone who'd been waiting over a year for this story to have a proper ending. Good for you, she said when I finished. I never liked that Richie boy. Too slick, you know. The kind of man who'd sell his own mother if the price was right. What about Angela? Mrs. Henderson was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Angela's always been ambitious. Even when you two first moved in, she had that look. Like she was always calculating, always figuring out how to get to the next level. I thought marriage and motherhood might settle her down, but some people just aren't built for contentment. You think I should have seen this coming? Honey, we see what we want to see, especially when it comes to people we love. You wanted to see a wife who was building a life with you. She wanted to see a husband who would bankroll her dreams without asking too many questions. For a while, both of you got what you wanted. And now? Now you're both finding out what happens when the fantasy meets reality. My phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Mom says you're trying to steal the house and leave us homeless. Is that true? I stared at the message for a long time. My daughter, who used to tell me everything, who used to think I was the smartest man in the world, was now getting her information about me from the woman who'd been lying to both of us for years. I typed back, It's my house, sweetheart. I'm not stealing it. I'm coming home. You left us. You disappeared for a year without even saying goodbye. I left because I found out your mother was cheating on me. I didn't disappear. I went away to figure out how to handle it. That's not what Mom said. I know. Your mom has said a lot of things that aren't true. Maybe someday you'll want to hear my side of the story. The response took a long time coming. Maybe. It wasn't much, but it was the first crack in the wall Angela had built between me and my daughter. I'd take it. Angela finally emerged from the house around 3 p.m., walking across the street to where I was sitting on Mrs. Henderson's porch. She looked like she'd been crying, which was unusual. Angela rarely cried, and never where people could see her. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening." "Not here, privately." I looked at Mrs. Henderson, who made a show of gathering up her knitting. "I'll just go check on my tomatoes," she said, disappearing around the side of the house, but probably not going far enough to miss anything interesting. "I can't sign those papers," Angela said once we were alone. "Why not?" "Because I'd be giving up everything I've worked for. The house, the business plans, everything." "You gave up everything when you decided to cheat on me. I'm just making it official." "Nick, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can rebuild." "With Richie? Richie's gone. That's over." "Since when?" "Since last night when he realized I had evidence that could destroy both of you." Angela's composure finally cracked. "What do you want from me? You want me to grovel? You want me to admit I made mistakes? Fine. I made mistakes. I hurt you. I hurt our family. I made terrible choices, but destroying my life isn't going to fix anything." "I'm not destroying your life. I'm just not subsidizing it anymore. The house is mine, always was mine. You can find somewhere else to live. My practice can survive without using my house as an office. What about Mia? She needs stability. Mia's 18 and in college. She'll be fine. And maybe she'll learn something about consequences and accountability from watching her mother face some." Angela was quiet for a long moment, staring at the house we'd shared for 15 years. "I never meant for it to happen this way." "How did you mean for it to happen?" I thought maybe you'd just accept it. Maybe we'd have an amicable divorce, split everything 50-50 and move on with our lives. While you kept my house and my money and started a new business with your boyfriend? It sounds terrible when you put it like that." "It is terrible, that's the point." She pulled the divorce papers out of her purse. They were wrinkled and coffee-stained, like she'd been carrying them around all day. "If I sign these, what happens to me? You figure out how to build a life that doesn't depend on my money or my property. You get a job, you find an apartment, you start over. Millions of people do it every day. I'm 41 years old, Nick. Starting over isn't as easy as you make it sound. You should have thought about that before you decided to blow up the life you had." Angela signed the papers with a pen that shook in her hand. Her signature looked nothing like the confident scrawl I remembered from years of Christmas cards and mortgage documents. "There," she said, sliding the papers back to me. "Are you happy now?" I looked at the signatures, at the legal language that would officially end 22 years of marriage, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, no sadness. Just emptiness where all the anger used to be. "No," I said finally, "but I'm free, and that's enough." Angela stood up and walked back to the house, my house, to pack her things. Mrs. Henderson reappeared from round the corner, her knitting in hand and curiosity written all over her face. "So?" she asked. "So it's over. How do you feel?" I thought about that for a moment. How did I feel? For over a year, I'd been planning this moment, imagining the satisfaction I'd get from watching Angela realize she'd lost everything. But now that it was happening, all I felt was tired. Like I just finished a job I never wanted to do in the first place. "That's probably healthy," Mrs. Henderson said. "Revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Sometimes you get what you want, but it doesn't make you feel the way you thought it would. Maybe not, but it beats being a victim." "True enough. So what now?" I looked at the house, at the life I was reclaiming, at the future that stretched out ahead of me, like an empty road. Now I figure out what comes next. "Any ideas?" "A few. I'm thinking about starting my own business. IT security consulting. Turns out I'm pretty good at finding out things people want to keep hidden." Mrs. Henderson smiled. "I bet you are." 6 months later. The Morrison digital security sign looked good next to the front door of my house. Business was better than I'd expected. Turns out there's a lot of demand for someone who can help people protect their digital lives or find out what their spouses are really doing online. Richie had left town entirely, last I heard. Someone told me he'd moved to Florida and was selling timeshares. Angela had found a small apartment across town and was working for a legal aid clinic, helping people who couldn't afford real lawyers. It was a come down from her previous ambitions, but it was honest work. Mia had started calling me again, tentatively at first, then with increasing frequency. She was majoring in computer science and wanted advice about internships. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, like archaeologists reconstructing something fragile and valuable from broken pieces. I never did feel the satisfaction I thought I'd get from my revenge. But I felt something else, something better. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can survive anything, that you can lose everything and still find a way to build something new from the ruins. Mrs. Henderson was right about revenge being like poison. But sometimes you need a little poison in your system to build up immunity to the people who want to destroy you. I was immune now, and that was worth more than any satisfaction.